to My Talk. My Talk is a series in which I give my take on issues that make the news. In this segment of My Talk, I will look at what's next for Cuba in the wake of the resignation of Raul Castro.
As for me, my task as First Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Cuba ends with the satisfaction of having fulfilled my duty and with confidence in the future of the country.
Cuba's Raul Castro stepped down from the helm of Cuban leadership, effectively ending decades of Castro leadership.
Since Raul's brother Fidel Castro came to power following the Cuban Revolution of the 1950s.
What's next to this beautiful Caribbean island of Cuba? Cuban President Canel was identified as new Chief Secretary of the Communist Party, a position formerly held by Raul Castro.
The country's top position will be now filled by Miguel Canel, who has served as Cuba's president for the past 3 years.
Since 2018, an aging Raul Castro has been working in the background while coaching Canel to take the position at the helm. Then, on April 19th, this year, 2021, the 60th anniversary of the Bay of Pigs, Raul Castro announced Canel as party chief and hence new captain of the Cuban ship. But just who is Canel? From early, Canel was recognized as the wonder boy of the Communist Party as he journeyed through its ranks. He was youth leader of the Communist Party, Villa Clara's province's principal leader for years, and a member of the Communist Party's decision-making division. He later became Minister of Higher Education, Vice President, and then President in 2018. But does this new leader have the required political legitimacy to lead a new Cuba? As new leader of the Communist Party, Canel would have to contend with the legendary status in which the Castro family is held by Cubans. He will need to live up to the revolutionary-style charisma of Fidel Castro, who took his island to mythical status with his overthrow of the US-backed Fulgencio Batista in 1959. With Fidel's continued defiance of the US and for his defeat of US-trained Marines at the Bay of Pigs, the elder Castro solidified his status in the eyes of the Cuban people. Without this kind of hyped revolutionary credentials, can Canel lead Cuba into a potent and relevant future? To lead Cuba forward, there is need for competent and innovative leadership. The country needs the kind of leadership that has the capacity to effectively meet the dual challenges of a generational struggle or divide and a deoxygenated Cuban economy. Canel may need to reshuffle his current administrative team, exhibit more transformational type leadership, and bring on board more competent and visionary human capital. He will certainly have the clout to make these adjustments given his new elevated status. Certainly, Canel, the academic, recognizes that the extent to which a country has or does not have a thriving economy determines the quality of life of its citizens. He is acutely aware of the crumbling state of the Cuban economy, in part as a result of the stranglehold the infamous US embargo placed on Cuba. This situation was compounded by the more recent hardline restrictions imposed by a Trump administration and by the pandemic that further sucked oxygen out of the economy. Will Canel be able to leverage the greater authority that comes with his elevated position to resuscitate the Cuban economy? Where can Cuba go from here? Cuba is in need of some kind of support for its economy. In earlier times, pressured by US sanctions, Cuba turned to the Soviet Union for support until the fall of the Soviet Union in 1989. Would Diaz-Canel now turn to America's rivals China or Russia? This would be an American embarrassment. After all, Cuba is in its backyard. To avoid this, the US should work to normalize relations with Cuba as it has done with the former Cold War adversaries of China and Vietnam. These Cold War hostilities need to cease in the interest of the welfare of the Cuban people. The US should treat this as a human rights issue, as the people of Cuba are caught in the twilight zone of poverty and delayed progress. The Diaz-Canel government and the US should negotiate new policies of engagement, for the world has gone global. More than ever, what affects one ripples through to others. With the change in administration in America, together with the right kind of Cuban leadership, the stage could be set for the return to the days of grandeur for Cuba. The new Biden administration projects the idea that it is set on fixing the broken. US-Cuban relations may be therefore on the verge of changing. The Biden administration could move to lift or modify the US embargo on Cuba, but will it? A strategic move by Biden could effectively bring Cuba into the 21st century. Reports are that Biden had planned to ease the pressure on Cuba, but with the Cuban American vote in Florida swinging towards the GOP, he seemed to have cooled his heels on this notion. This stance is unacceptable. For where else can Cubans look for much needed help to resuscitate a feeble economy? Then is the Biden administration disposed to work with Cuba and vice versa? A Diaz-Biden alliance is possible and will be welcomed. However, as president in this new dawn, Diaz-Canel cannot continue to rail against America as his predecessors did. His economy needs American intervention. For one, when this island nation was a haunt of the rich and famous American, US dollars kept the Cuban economy afloat. With the resumption of diplomatic relations with the United States in 2014, there was increased pressure in US tourism. Some economic buoyancy was also experienced with President Barack Obama's visit in 2016. Clearly, more inflows of American tourism is needed. The Diaz-Canel administration also needs the cooperation of powerful Cuban American lobbyists to function to push the US and Cuba to move beyond verbal sparring towards policies of positive Cuban engagement. The Canel government can leverage the influence of Cuban American lobbyists to have them play a role in getting the economy going again. I am sure that they could not have become so anti-Castro that they are now anti-Cuban. But in the past, Cuban American lobbyists were successful in pushing, supporting, and leveraging measures that were meant to punish Castro or that were antithetical to the Castro regime. It's time for reflection and redefinition of this group. It's a time for the rebranding of their mission towards that of becoming midwives to the birthing of a new Cuba. Another huge challenge for Cuban leadership is that of bridging the existing generational divide. On half of the population of Havana are under 35 and may want to move beyond conversations characterized by loyalty to the revolution. They may not want to live with the uniformity and scarcity buttressed by empty promises that marked their parents' generation. They may envisage a new Cuba for themselves. Some of them already think that the party does not represent their generation. The Diaz-Canel administration needs to treat with this issue so that it may reflect the issues, the desires of a post-revolution generation. They may begin by challenging the aging generation of leaders not to continue to steer the wheels behind the scenes when they step down, as in the Castro family. The Castro family is reportedly controlling the economy and matters related to security, according to the Washington Post. How much newness could this allow for? Also, while the country's passed on to a new generation of leaders, if they are like Diaz, who said he came to fulfill the program developed under the guidelines of socialism and the revolution, there would be no room for a new Cuba. There needs to be an erection of new platforms of thought to allow for the evolution of new leadership paradigms. Coveted new bilateral relations between the US and Cuba would not be established if these old perspectives and paradigms persist. They will only allow for cultural continuity when the situation calls for a new political culture. In Fidel Castro's Cuba, he defined the Cuban reality with enabling support from a generation who witnessed the revolution. The post-revolution generation cries out for change as they have evolved away from mindsets that called upon them to subordinate their judgments to the judgments of their leaders. Many of this new generation claim that Castro's leadership is out of touch, and Diaz-Canel himself is an enigma. He's possessed of a potential handicapping dualism that may compromise the reality of a new Cuba.
Years. He is a party loyalist who has advocated reform of the ailing economy without altering Cuba's one-party system.
Also, while the country is being passed on to a new generation of leaders, if they are like Diaz, who said he came to fulfill the program developed under the guidelines of socialism and the revolution, there will be no room for the new Cuba. We hope that Diaz-Canel will rethink. There needs to be an erection of new platforms of thought to allow for the evolution of a new leadership paradigm. Coveted new bilateral relations between US and Cuba will not be established if these old perspectives and paradigms persist. They will only allow for cultural continuity when the situation calls for a new political culture. In Fidel Castro's Cuba, he defined the Cuban reality with the enabling support from a generation who witnessed the revolution. This post-revolution generation cries out for change as they have evolved away from mindsets that call upon them to subordinate their judgments to the judgments of their leaders. The tide must change. Diaz-Canel must recognize that Cuba is in need of a new model, as the old paradigms did not work, have not been working for a long time, and are not currently working for Cuba. There's need for a radical shift for the realization of a new, potent, and thriving Cuba. I'm Ingrid Rizzolo. Bye for now. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time. Bye.